Hey everybody, Spencer here. Just want to do another quick video. This one will talk about printing with resolution, and especially with all these newer cameras coming out that's 36 megapixel. Canon's got the 50 megapixel out. They're talking about the next generation camera is going to be like 75 megapixel. So the question I get is how much is enough? And ultimately depends on how big you want to print. So I've got a couple samples here I'm going to show you. And also, if you're going to be doing competitions, whether it's for prints or whether you're going to be doing it for web, this might help determine what you want to do if you're looking to upgrade for a camera next time, or what you currently have. So let me go ahead and open up. Let's see, I got this one from a Nikon D810. So let me go ahead and open that up. It's a raw file. These are all raw files. As far as the pixel goes, it shouldn't matter with the RAW versus JPEG as far as the pixel size of the sensor goes. So we'll talk about that in a minute. This is a Osprey that was going for a fish down here in Florida, and he didn't make it. He obviously didn't get it. But really great shot. This was taken again with the Nikon D810, and you can see over here in our metadata, this was taken with a 70 to 200, 2.8. 1/5000 of a second, which is, geez, you should be able to stop anything at that speed. So okay, so we'll just go ahead and open this up. I'm not going to adjust it. There's plenty of videos you can see about how to work with this. Maybe later, if you guys are interested, let me know, and I can definitely show you how I work with all these sliders. But let's go ahead and click on Open Image. I am using Elements 13 today. You could do this in Elements 11, 12, 14, 15 should be out, I would say, in the next couple weeks, because I'm recording this September 23rd, 2016. So this is about the time when they come out with a new version of Elements every year. If you have Photoshop CC, of course, that will work. I still have my good old-fashioned Photoshop CS5. I've been dearly hanging on to, so I haven't done the subscription thing, but if you have an older version of Photoshop, that will work too. So as far as Lightroom goes, this is one of the things that me and Lightroom don't get along with, because I like to see the exact resolution, especially when I go to crop. And I find when you crop in Lightroom, it's kind of, yeah, they give you an aspect ratio, but I can't put in 8:10 at 300 dpi or 360 dpi, so that kind of drives me a little nuts, because I was a pre-press manager for 20 years, so this is kind of what I did for work. So that drives me nuts that Lightroom doesn't have that. But anyway, so again, you can use Elements, Photoshop, no problem. So I haven't cropped this yet. So let's just go up here to Image, Resize, Image Size. And here you can see it's 34.5 meg. And here's the pixels and dimensions. So we're basically, well, to keep the math easy, we'll say 4200 by 2800. And then down here, it's telling you the document size. So this has to do with, if you're going to put this on paper. And right now it says 14, again, we're going to keep the math easy, 14 inches by 9.5. So this is what sometimes can happen, is this Resample Image box gets turned on. And let's say you want like a 16 by 20. So what some folks will do is they'll say, oh, well, obviously this is the longest side. So I'll go ahead and I'll put 20 in here. And then you can see it also changed the height, because there's a little bar with a chain over here. And that's on because it says constrained proportions. So in this case, you can see even 16 by 20, we're still not there yet. So we would actually have to increase this even further. So let's say we make this 16, and we'd have to then crop. We'd be losing a little bit to get the actual 16 by 20. And I'll show you this in a little bit. I'm just trying to show you exactly what's happening here. So what we're actually doing by making the document size bigger this way, by only having the chain on the width and the height, is we're actually making the physical size bigger, and we're adding pixels, which is generally not a good thing. That can soften your images. It depends on how much you're having to upscale them, depends on how soft they're going to come out. So, okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just cancel out of this and just to show you, now, for example, this was taken with that 70 to 200 lens. So it's, not like a 400 or, 600, something that would actually be worth taking for bird photography. So let me go over here to the crop tool. Crop tool, right there you go. And again, this all works exactly the same in Photoshop. The only difference is the option bar that's in Elements that's on the bottom is on the top in Photoshop. So thanks Adobe, they can't keep anything all the same, so none of us are confused, but that's Adobe. So again, let's say we want 16 by 20. So if I go in here, and you'll notice they give you these presets, there's no 16 by 20. So if I go up here to no restriction, and then the width, again, let's say I want the 20 this way, so I'll just put in 20, and if you hit tab, it actually takes you to the next field, and then I can put in 16, and then when I hit tab again, it's going to say inches, and I'm going to leave this blank, this resolution. Again, if this would be the same as what I was just showing you, if I were to put 300 in here, I would actually be adding pixels. So let me just go ahead and leave that blank for a minute. So of course we want to be able to see our Osprey here pretty predominantly. So I'm just going to come in here, drag a box. Does not have to be perfect, obviously. We're taking your first go at this. And you take in consideration, of course, your rule of thirds and all that kind of good stuff. So let's just say something like this. Okay. Or you may say, because he's kind of tall from top to bottom, maybe you don't want to go 20 across by 16. You'd rather have it the other way around. So what I could do is I can cancel this and then come down here. And this is your swap arrow right here, switch arrow. So if I click on this, you'll notice that now it's 16 by 20 instead of 20 by 16. So we should be able to get more of a portrait type of crop out of this. So I'm just going to say something like this and click the check mark. So it cropped it. Okay, so I'm zooming in. By the way, that's a little shortcut you can do. It's Command plus or Control plus on the PC. And as you can see, you can zoom in. Now that doesn't look bad. It's 100%. So now let's go and look at our actual size. Let's say we were going to print this 16 by 20. And if I go over here to resize image size, you're going to see we got the 16 by 20 that we were shooting for. The problem is the resolution is now 60. So that's actually below screen resolution, because screen resolution is generally 72 dpi. So this is where you may want a camera that has more megapixels if you're going to print bigger prints and you're going to want to crop. That's the two big things. If you're shooting for eBay or Facebook, email, anything online, any camera that's 12 megapixel will basically do you for the most part. If you wanted to do prints 11 by 14, 16 by 20, 20 by 24, I actually have made some prints 40 by 60. So if you're going to, I would say anything above 1620, 16 by 20 and above, I would consider getting at least a 24 megapixel sensor. If you want to go bigger than that, then obviously you may want to invest in something a little bit bigger. Now, I mean, of course, if I had a longer lens, that would help with this too. That's the other way around this, right? So I don't have to crop as much. So this again was a Nikon D810, which it's a great camera. It's a little older, but it's 12.5 megapixel. So, all right, so let's take a look at something a little bit different here. So I'm going to open up a raw file from the Nikon D810. So it's a great shot. All right, so there we go. Again, you can see over here, this was shot with a 24-70 at 2.8, so it's great blurred background, low ISO, 80th of a second, so great shot. So I'm going to click on Open Image. This was provided by a friend of mine. If you want to go to her website, her name is Gail Arnold, and you can check out her website at GailLouisePhoto.com. So she got some pretty cool stuff happening over there. A lot of high-speed photography, and she's playing with freezing liquids and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of neat. Anyway, so here is our photo. Now I haven't cropped this. We haven't touched this. So if we go back to image, resize, image size, right off the bat, you're going to notice our file size, before was like what, 35 meg. This one's 103. So this one's got a little bit more weight to it, which is a good thing if I'm always thinking of talking about printing now. And you'll notice that the width and the height in pixels is a lot bigger than it was before. And this is a 36 megapixel camera. So, and right off the bat, we've got a lot more here to play with, and we're at 300. So this, see, we're already at 16 by 20. We haven't even cropped it yet. So this is a good thing. So again, if I wanted to crop a little bit, just to say do our vertical crop, I am going to lose a little bit. So I'm just going to come back down here, choose, let's do this use photo ratio. I'm going to do no restriction. That's how it wipes it all out, so I can put in what I want. Now obviously this is a portrait of a dog, so we're going to go 16 tab. That moves us to the next field, 20 tab, and we'll see what we get here. So let me go ahead and zoom back out, and we'll just grab this like so. Again, not too much rocket science going on here. We're just drawing a box, going to make it fit for the sake of our discussion here. So whoever's dog this is, I'm sure they would love to have this print. All right, so again, we'll look at it at 100%. Now, since we are dealing with an animal that has eyes, oh, there's the nose. You definitely want to make sure the eyes are sharp. So obviously, when Gail took this, you can see that her focus point was right on the eyes. And this is great glass. You can see there's actually a reflection of obviously her taking the photo here. So great stuff. All right, so it's 16 by 20. Now if I go into check the image size, and you can see we're down to 218 on the resolution. Now this isn't terrible. So here's a little secret. I'm just going to cancel out of this, and I'm going to go back to the original uncropped version because I want to explain a little bit about resolution. And there's some things you can do if you have to crop a little bit like I just did, and you kind of need to get a decent sized print. So let's say you don't have, $3,000 or $4,000 to go out and buy a brand new camera body. But you want to make a nice print. So this is kind of the other way around it. Depending upon how much you have to, the end size of the print that you want to make, and also depending on the size of how much you want to crop. So let's say, for example, in our example here, we have this, we'll say 24.5 by 16. Now, the resolution, this you can kind of play with a little bit. So if you have an Epson printer, so I have the Epson 9880, it's a 44-inch wide printer. But if you have a 24-inch printer, if you have one that does 17 by 22 sheets, if you even have a $100 printer that came off the rack at Staples or wherever, that's fine. So their native resolution is 360. That's what they like to be printed at. That's Epson's default resolution. If you have a Canon, so I know Canon Pixma, a lot of my friends have those printers and they love them to death. So Canon's native resolution is 300. So you can see how I can actually get a little bit bigger print on the Canon than I can on the Epson. So it's actually a little bit less. However, here's a little trick you can do if you're running basically out of data. So we want to make the physical size bigger. We don't want to take away any pixels, and we don't want to add any pixels. We just kind of want to shuffle them around. So here's a little trick, and I do this a lot with some of my stuff because I don't have one of these brand new fancy cameras. So this is what I have to do. Resolution. As long as this resample is turned off, you're going to see again, we've got this little bar over here is on the width, the height, and the resolution. So if I change one of these three fields, the other two are going to change. So in this case, I'm going to change the resolution again. Now, here's the trick. Half of 360 is 180, which is another native resolution format for the Epson. So if you're printing, you need to print something big, you'll notice this jumped up to say 41 by 27. So if you had to crop some, I'm telling you, I do this on all my prints and nobody has said, well, geez, that doesn't look very good on a print. They can't tell the difference. And I'm printing on a luster paper. That's the one I seem to like the best. If you're printing on a fiber paper, that you can even get away with this with even more in canvas as well. Now, obviously, if you're on a Canon printer, so that was 300 was the native resolution on Canon, you could bump this down to 150. And I have done this on my Epson. And again, you know, unless you're looking at it with a loop, I have not had anybody come up to me and say, well, geez, these prints are pixelated or anything like that. So here you can see now we're up to 49, it's all in inches now, by 32 and, well, let's say 33 to make the math easy. So again, if I had to crop down, like on that bird photo, then we'd be fine. So for example, let me just cancel out of this. Let's go back to our Osprey photo for a minute. So that would be this one right here. And we're just going to say, fine, that looks lovely. So if I know, for example, I need to crop heavily on this because I didn't have a long lens and I want to make a big print out of this, this is what you can do. Is you can still do your 16 by 20 like we talked about, 16 by 20, but when you come over here to your resolution, instead of putting in the 360 or 300, if you know you're going to have to do some heavy cropping and you'll need a big print, let's say, for example, we do the Canon. So if I put in 150 and I go ahead and I crop this, believe it or not, it's going to be fine. So if I said that was okay and I can print that, that's going to be just fine. 180 on the Epson, be just fine. So that's kind of the trick, is you can use half of those native resolutions, which is also another native resolution of the printer. They just don't tell you that. You know, the old adage, like when I worked in commercial printing, everything was 300 DPI because we were working with offset press. We actually put, you know, we got our ink in barrels and we had to load them into a regular press and I had to make plates and all that good stuff. So we told all of our customers 300 DPI, and that's why some people would say, well, can't you just take my stuff off the internet and just print it? No, it doesn't work. 72 DPI, trying to get enough dense pixels in it to actually print, is just, there's just not enough data there. So that's a little trick that you can do. Now, if you're really in a bind, and I'll go ahead and show you this. If you're really in a bind and you need to upsize this to say double the resolution for whatever reason, and this is all you got, there is another way. Generally they say don't do this, but I've tried it with a couple pictures and it's done okay. So if this is a paid thing and it's called Perfect Resize. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this. It's from On1, and I bought the On1 collection, and to be honest with you, I don't use any of this stuff. I've used Nik for 10 years and now it's free. So you know, now the big controversy is, are they going to support it now that it's free? Probably not. But for now, I'm pretty happy with that. But anyway, we're talking about Perfect Resize right now. So I've got version 9. I think they're up to version 11 right now. So this is going to load. You can see Perfect Resize is taking over. If you haven't done much with this, you can go crazy with all these tools and things in here. But this is the area that I check out, is document size over here. And let's zoom in so we can see what exactly it is we're looking at here. Now, by the way, this is a live preview, which is nice. So whatever you stick in here, for example, if I put in, let's say we're going to print this on our Epson printer, so it'd be 360. So we're really going to go for the gusto here. And when I hit tab, it kind of takes it a minute. I don't know if you saw it, like the little circle popped up, and it did it. This is now 16 by 20 at 360 DPI. So if I come down here and hit apply, and this is where, if you have a faster computer, it's really going to help. If you're working with, say, Photoshop, and you have a bunch of layers, it has to actually go through and resize each layer. So depending upon your project, it could take it a minute or two. This is not too bad. Okay, so this is now 6. Let's check it out. Image. resize, image size. So you just to verify, this is really 16 by 20 at 360 dpi. Remember, we basically had to res this up from 150. And let me just go to 100%. So again, there's a couple of different ways you can do that, but you can also type in 100 here. That's another way you can do it. And if I grab got the hand tool. So if we kind of get down here, so it's a little soft. So then you got to decide, you know, the print size, which is also under view print size. Now, obviously, I'm on a 15-inch MacBook Retina. So is this 16 by 20? Absolutely not. So probably, you know, I don't know if this would be a candidate for that. But if we check the original, let me just go ahead, and this is before perfect resize. To be honest with you, if I zoom in a little bit, it is soft to begin with. So that was my fault. The focus was off. So if we tried this on a different picture, it would be fine. In fact, I had somebody send me their cell phone picture, and I was able to make it 8 by 10, 300 dpi. So this is not a fault of the plugin. This is a fault of the photographer. That would be Mr. Numbnuts me. So I screwed that up. So anyway, so that is another way. Perfect resize is really a great option if you're, you know, it's cheaper than the camera body. Just depends, again, at the end of the day, how big you want to print. So again, I also do, I have all Epson stuff. They have not done me wrong. Again, I have nothing against Canon or HP or any of the rest of them. All I can tell you is my experience with the Epson products, because that's what I've had. But again, I can tell you at 180 dpi, as far as the Epson goes, no problem. On the Canon, I've seen some stuff come off of there at 150. It's been fine. So, you know, of course, like if you're doing like a 16 by 20, we're not supposed to have our nose 2 inches from the glass, or if it's behind, you know, a print. Of course, as photographers, that's what we do. If we had a loop in our pocket, we'd pull it out and start looking at it with that. But obviously, we don't do that. But, you know, if you're looking at 16 by 20 on the wall, you're probably going to be back a couple feet anyway. It's going to look just fine. So, all right, I hope that helps. I hope that clears up some of the issue as far as, oh, well, when I crop, why can't I get my pictures to a certain print size? That's the big questions I've been getting on email lately. Is, for example, somebody will send me a photo and they'll say, oh, how big can I make this? The first thing I do is go up to this image, resize, image size, and I will look to see what the native pixel resolutions in this document size is. And then basically I start playing around with the resolution down here like we just explained. And then I can tell them, oh, by the way, you can get an 8 by 10 or 11 by 14, or sometimes if we need to push a little bit, you know, might be able to get 16 by 20 or 20 by 24. So again, it just depends on what camera. Most cameras now have 24 megapixels if you've bought your camera in the past few years. Again, I've got a Nikon D300. I'm borrowing this Nikon D700. They're both 12 megapixel. And I've gotten some pretty nice prints out of them. So anyway, it just depends on how big your final product wants to be. All right, I appreciate you guys watching the video. If you'd like more of these, just hit the subscribe button at the bottom. And if you have any comments, just leave them down there and I'll get back to you. Thanks a lot.